The HOA told me I was trespassing. Then I showed them proof the entire neighborhood was built on my land. I was sitting on the cracked wooden steps behind my rented duplex, holding a lukewarm coffee I'd reheated twice already, staring at the open bay door of my auto shop across the alley. The place smelled like oil, old rubber, and stress. The kind of smell that settles into your clothes and reminds you that no matter how hard you work, you were still one bad month away from losing everything. Business had been slow for weeks. Customers kept postponing repairs. Parts suppliers wanted payment up front. And my landlord had left a voicemail that morning that I hadn't had the courage to listen to yet. That S when my phone rang. A known number. I almost let it go to voicemail. I figured it was another collections call or a supplier reminding me that goodwill only goes so far. But something made me swipe to answer. Hello. There was a pause on the other end, like the person was confirming something. Am I speaking with Daniel Mercer? Yes, I said cautiously. This is the probate office calling regarding the estate of Harold Mercer. The name hit me harder than I expected. Harold Mercer. My uncle. My mother's older brother. A man I hadn't seen in over 15 years. Not because of a falling out, but because life just drifted. He moved out of state. I stayed. Occasional holiday cards turned into silence. Then nothing. I am sorry to inform you, the woman continued, her voice professional but not cold, that your uncle passed away last week. I sat back against the railing, the wood creaking under my weight. I didn't know what to say. I felt sad. Sure. But also guilty. Guilty for not calling. Guilty for not checking in. Guilty for assuming there'd always be more time. I am sorry to hear that. I finally said. There was another pause. You are listed as the sole beneficiary of his estate. That made me blink. Estate. I repeated. I think there has been a mistake. My uncle lived alone. He wasn't exactly wealthy. That may be true in terms of liquid assets. She replied carefully. However, he did own property. I let out a small, humorless laugh. Property? Yes, sir. How much are we talking about? A trailer. A small lot. There was a soft tapping sound, like keys on a keyboard. 502 acres. I stood up so fast my coffee spilled down my hand. I am sorry. I said. Can you repeat that? 502 acres of land. Located just outside of Pine Hollow. My heart started pounding in my ears. 500 acres wasn't just land. It was ranch land. Development land. Generational land. The kind of thing normal people don't just inherit while worrying about rent. That can be right. I said. I would be known about something like that. According to our records. She said. Unfazed. The land has been in your uncle's name for over 20 years. Taxes paid annually. No liens. No mortgages. No co-owners. I leaned against the railing, suddenly lightheaded. And what's on the land? I asked. There was a hesitation this time. Not long, but noticeable. It appears the property is currently occupied. Occupied how? I asked. Well, she said slowly. You'll all see when you visit. That was the first moment something felt off. 2 days later, I borrowed my neighbor's truck because mine was in pieces, grabbed the printed deed they emailed me, and drove out to Pine Hollow expecting. I don't know. Fields. Trees. Maybe an old barn. Something quiet. Instead, the GPS guided me straight to a wrought iron gate flanked by stone pillars, trimmed hedges, and a security camera that swiveled the moment I stopped. There was a massive sign embedded into the stone wall. Cedar Crest Heights. A private HOA community. I sat there for a second, engine idling, thinking the GPS had glitched. This wasn't farmland. This was a luxury subdivision. Perfect sidewalks stretched into the distance. Identical mailboxes. Street lamps evenly spaced like a showroom display. I could see rooftops behind the trees. Pools. Playgrounds. A fountain in the center roundabout. The gate camera zoomed in on my face. A speaker crackled to life. Can I help you? The voice was sharp. Female. Annoyed. Yeah. I said. I think I am on my land. There was a short laugh. Like I'd told a bad joke. This is private property. Residents only. I inherited it. I said, keeping my tone calm. 500 acres. From Harold Mercer. Silence. Then the voice came back. Colder. There's no land here under that name. You need to leave immediately or security will be notified. Please call them. I said, I'd love to talk. The gate buzzed. It opened. I hadn't even parked yet when I saw her power walking toward me from across the lawn like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. She was dressed in pastel workout clothes that looked like they'd never seen sweat. Sunglasses perched on top of her head like a crown. Blonde hair cut into a perfect shoulder-length helmet. Clipboard tucked into her arm like a shield. Excuse me. She snapped before I even shut the door. You can just drive in here. I think I can. I said, since you're standing on my property. She scoffed. I am the HOA president. She said, as if that explained everything. And you are trespassing. I introduced myself and handed her the deed. She took it reluctantly, scanning it with a practiced expression of irritation that slowly cracked. Her lips pressed together. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes flicked up to me, then back to the paper. This has to be a mistake, she said quickly. This community has existed for nearly a decade. I am sure it has, I replied, on land my uncle owned the entire time. She handed the paper back like it burned. You were confused, she said. Developers handled everything. This land was legally acquired. I gestured around us. So where's the deed? She straightened, regaining her posture. Our legal team will contact you. Until then, I suggest you leave before you upset residents. I looked past her. People had started coming out onto porches. A man with a phone raised slightly, pretending not to record. A woman tugging her child closer. Curtains moving. I'll leave, I said, just not quietly. Her face hardened. You don't understand how things work here. Oh, I said, I think I am starting to. As I drove out through the open gate, one thought kept looping in my head. They didn't just build houses on my land. They built an entire kingdom. And kingdoms don't like it when the real owner shows up. I didn't leave Cedar Crest Heights right away. I drove slowly, deliberately, down the main road that cut through the subdivision, letting the weight of what I was seeing sink in. Every house looked expensive in that quiet, understated way that screamed money without trying too hard. Brick facades, wide driveways, two-car garages with polished doors, lawns trimmed so evenly they looked fake. American flags hung just right, not wrinkled, not faded, like they were part of some rulebook. Kids rode bikes in neat circles. A couple walked a golden retriever that probably cost more than my entire tool set. Everything about the place felt controlled, curated, managed down to the smallest detail, and all of it was sitting on land that wasn't theirs. I parked near the community park, stepping out of the truck and stretching my legs. There was a fountain in the center, water spilling over polished stone into a shallow pool. A sign nearby listed rules in bold lettering. No dogs off leash. No loud music. Park closes at dusk. HOA fines apply. It was the kind of place where someone always had their eye on you. Sure enough, I didn't stand there more than a minute before I felt it. That prickle between your shoulders when you know someone else watching. I turned and saw her again. The HOA president, standing across the grass with two other people now. A man in a polo shirt and khaki shorts, arms crossed, and another woman clutching her phone like she was waiting for permission to call someone important. She marched over, clipboard tucked tight against her chest. I told you to leave, she said sharply. And I said I would. I replied, I am just taking a look at my land first. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just disbelief mixed with irritation. You really think you can just show up and claim a neighborhood? She said, that's not how property law works. Funny, I said, because that's exactly how inheritance works. The man beside her stepped forward. Sir, you're causing a disturbance. Residents are uncomfortable. I looked around. A few people had stopped pretending not to watch. Phones were out now. Windows cracked open. I am not yelling, I said calmly. I am not threatening anyone. I am just standing on land I legally own. You don't own this, she snapped. The HOA owns the common areas. and homeowners own their lots. Then it should be easy to prove. I said, show me the deed. Her jaw tightened. That information is confidential. She said, land ownership is public record. I replied, you know that. She turned red. Not embarrassed, but angry. The kind of anger that comes from someone who isn't used to being questioned. I am asking you one last time to leave, she said, her voice rising just enough for the nearby residents to hear. If you don't, I will have security escort you off the premises. I smiled slightly. That only made her angrier. Go ahead, I said. I'd love to hear how they explain trespassing on my property. She stormed off, heels digging into the grass, phone already at her ear. The man and woman followed, casting me looks like I'd personally insulted them. 10 minutes later, a security cart rolled up. 2 guards stepped out, clearly uncomfortable, like they'd been dragged into something they didn't fully understand. Sir, one of them said, we've had a report. I know, I interrupted, holding out the deed. Here. He took it, scanned it, then handed it to the other guard. They exchanged looks. This might be above our pay grade. The second guard muttered. That's what I thought. I said. They handed the paper back and cleared their throats. We're going to report this to our supervisor. The first guard said. In the meantime, maybe it's best if you head out. I will, I said again. Soon. I spent another 20 minutes walking the perimeter of the park, noticing details that didn't sit right. Utility access boxes tucked behind hedges, maintenance sheds that looked newer than the rest of the community, signs that read HOA authorized personnel only, planted on ground that was supposedly owned by the HOA but felt more like it was being claimed out of habit, not legality. When I finally left, I could feel eyes following me all the way back to the gate. That night, my phone started blowing up. Blocked numbers, voicemails left unclipped, professional tones, emails from a law firm representing Cedar Crest Heights HOA, demanding that I cease all attempts to enter the property and refrain from contacting residents. The language was aggressive, but vague, heavy on threats, light on facts. By morning, I knew exactly what was happening. They weren't confident. They were scared. 2 days later, I came back. This time, I didn't announce myself. I parked just outside the gate and walked along the public sidewalk, making sure every step I took was legal. That didn't stop them from noticing. A woman stepped out of her driveway and stared at me like I'd insulted her house. Another man crossed the street to avoid me. Someone whispered, loud enough for me to hear. That's him. The HOA president appeared again. This time flanked by 2 different board members and a man in a suit who looked like he'd slept in his car. This has gone far enough, she said the moment she reached me. You're harassing our community. I haven't spoken to anyone. I replied. I haven't knocked on a single door. You're creating fear. She snapped. Fear of what? I asked. Paperwork. The man in the suit stepped forward. My client is prepared to take legal action if you continue. Great, I said. So am I. That shut him up. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. You don't want to do this, she said. People here have money. Influence. I met her stare. So did the last people who tried to take land that wasn't theirs. She straightened quickly, glancing around to see if anyone had heard. Leave, she hissed. I will, I said again, after I am done learning who you really are. By the end of the week, the tone changed. No more yelling. No more public confrontations. Just quiet hostility. Security cars patrolled more often. Cameras followed me whenever I drove by. Residents stopped making eye contact altogether. And then the letters escalated. Accusations of harassment. Claims that I was interfering with community operations. Threats of restraining orders. Still no deed. Still no proof. That told me everything. They didn't own the land. They just controlled it. And control was the only thing keeping their whole little world together. What they didn't understand was simple. I wasn't trying to take their houses. I was trying to take the truth. And once that came out, their clipboard authority, their fines, their rules, their fake confidence, none of it would matter. They built their power on paperwork they didn't have. And now the person who did have it wasn't going away. I didn't go back to Cedar Crest Heights right away after that second confrontation. Not because I was intimidated, but because I learned enough to know that arguing with people who relied on authority instead of facts was a waste of time. If they really owned the land, a proof would be easy. One document, one recorded transfer, one signature. The fact that none of that had been shown to me yet was louder than any threat letter they could send. So instead of driving back to the gates, I drove downtown. The county clerk's office sat in an aging concrete building tucked between a tax services firm and a pawn shop. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper and dust. A ceiling fan rattled overhead, doing more noise than good. There were no security guards, no polished marble floors, just linoleum, plastic chairs, and a counter worn smooth by decades of elbows. I took a number and waited. When my turn came, I slid the deed across the counter to a woman who looked like she'd been doing this job longer than I'd been alive. Her glasses rested low on her nose as she typed with deliberate slowness, eyes flicking between the screen and the document. "What parcel number are you looking for?" she asked. "Should be everything under Cedar Crest Heights," I replied. Her fingers paused for a second. "That's a large area," she said. "I know." She leaned closer to the screen, clicked a few times, then frowned slightly. "Well, that's odd." That phrase alone tightened my stomach. She turned the monitor so I could see. The map on the screen showed the subdivision clearly: roads, lots, cul-de-sacs, even the community park. All of it highlighted in a single outline. "One parcel," she said. "Not broken up. No individual lot deeds?" I asked. She shook her head slowly. "Nope. The entire development sits on one parcel. And who owns it?" She clicked again. "Harold Mercer," she said. "Until last month. Now, Daniel Mercer." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. So the HOA never bought it. She pursed her lips. There's no record of any sale. No transfer. No subdivision filing. I stared at the screen. How is that even possible? She leaned back in her chair and folded her arms. "It's not. Not legally." I asked her to keep going. She pulled up the tax records next. Year after year. The same parcel. Paid in full. On time. Never delinquent. No gaps. No disputes. "Who paid these?" I asked. She zoomed in on the payment history. "Looks like a trust account. Set up about 18 years ago. My uncle," I said quietly. She nodded. "He never missed a payment." The room felt suddenly smaller. "So you're telling me," I said, "that an HOA built an entire subdivision without ever owning the land?" She looked at me for a long moment before answering. "I am telling you someone submitted paperwork that let them act like they did." I asked about permits. She sighed and stood up. "That's in another system." She returned a few minutes later with a different clerk. This one younger. Eyes sharper. Curiosity clearly sparked. They pulled building permits, utility approvals, zoning clearances. Every single one referenced ownership documentation. Documentation that didn't exist in the land records. "That's a problem," the younger clerk said. "That's a felony," the older one replied flatly. I asked them to print everything. Maps, tax history, permit filings, parcel overlays. As the printer whirred to life, the older clerk lowered her voice. "If I were you," she said, "I'd talk to a real estate attorney. A good one." "I plan to," I said. "And," she added, glancing around as if the walls might hear, "you didn't hear this from me. But things like this don't happen by accident. Someone had to sign off on those permits." That thought followed me all the way back to my truck. Later that afternoon, I sat across from my attorney, spreading the documents out across her conference table. She didn't interrupt while I explained. She didn't nod. She didn't react at all until I finished. Then she removed her glasses. "They didn't just mess up," she said. "They fabricated ownership." I asked her what that meant for me. "It means the HOA has no legal right to exist in its current form," she said. "Every rule they enforce, every fine they issue, every dollar they collect, none of it is backed by legitimate land ownership. Can they fix it? I asked. She shook her head. Not retroactively. And not without your consent. She flipped through the permits again, tapping one page with her pen. See this? She said. Utilities. Roads. Stormwater management. All of this requires easements at minimum. There are none. I frowned. So how did they get approved? She leaned back. Someone inside the county either didn't check or help them. The next week felt different. The HOA's emails stopped threatening and started sounding defensive. Phrases like misunderstanding and administrative oversight began appearing. They requested meetings instead of demanding silence. I declined all of them. Instead, my attorney filed a quiet title action. That's when things really shifted. Once the filing went public, the county couldn't ignore it anymore. Internal reviews were triggered. Departments started talking to each other, and cracks began to show. A zoning officer called my attorney asking for copies of the documents we had. A utilities inspector requested maps. A permitting supervisor wanted to know why his department's approvals referenced deeds that didn't exist. The HOA responded the only way people do when they've been cornered by paperwork. They lied louder. They claimed the land had been gifted to the community decades ago. They suggested records were lost. They implied clerical errors. None of it matched reality. And then something else surfaced. A fenced utility area on the southern edge of the subdivision. Newer than everything else. Cameras. Generator shed. Restricted access. My attorney compared it to the approved development plans. That shouldn't be there. She said. It wasn't inside the permitted zone. Which meant they had expanded onto land they weren't even pretending to have permission for. The county noticed too. That was the moment the tone changed completely. Instead of HOA lawyers sending letters, it was the county asking questions. Instead of threats, there were subpoenas. And instead of me trying to prove I own the land, they were trying to prove how they got away with pretending they did. I hadn't gone looking for a fight. I'd gone looking for the truth. And the truth turned out to be far bigger than one HOA president with a clipboard. They built their entire authority on documents that didn't exist. And once the county started pulling that thread, everything they wrapped around it began to unravel. Once the quiet title action was filed, the atmosphere around Cedar Crest Heights changed overnight. The neighborhood didn't look any different on the surface. The lawns were still trimmed. The fountains still ran. The flag still hung just right. But underneath that polished calm, something had snapped. The first sign came in my mailbox. A thick envelope. Certified mail. The return address belonged to a law firm I'd never heard of. Inside was a letter accusing me of harassment, interference with community operations, and intentional distress of residents. It demanded I stop all presence near or around Cedar Crest Heights, and threatened immediate legal action if I didn't comply. It didn't mention land ownership once. That omission wasn't an accident. My attorney read it and smiled in a way that wasn't comforting. They were posturing. She said, if they had a deed, it would be the first thing on the page. The next day, security patrols doubled. I saw carts circling the perimeter. Guards stopping residents to check in. Cameras adjusted to point outward instead of inward. It felt less like a community and more like a fortress preparing for siege. Then the HOA emails started. Not to me about me. Residents received notices warning them about an outside individual attempting to disrupt the community with false claims. They were told not to engage, not to share information, and to report any contact immediately. The HOA president signed every message personally. She wanted control of the narrative. What she didn't expect was how fast fear spreads when people realize the people in charge might be lying. I found that out 3 days later when my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, a woman said hesitantly. I got your number from a neighbor. My name is Laura. I live on Birch Lane. I listened quietly. They told us not to talk to you. She said, but I am scared. We bought our house 6 years ago. If what you're saying is true, does that mean we don't own anything? I didn't sugarcoat it. You own your house, I said. The structure, but the land underneath it. That's what's being questioned. There was silence on the other end. Then a shaky breath. They never showed us a deed. She said, They said the HOA handled all land matters. That sentence echoed in my head long after the call ended. More calls followed. A retired couple who said they'd been fined repeatedly for landscaping violations and wondered if those fines were even legal. A young man who admitted he'd been threatened with liens over unpaid HOA fees. A woman who said she'd asked for land records years ago and was told she didn't need to worry about that kind of thing. The pattern was unmistakable. Control through ignorance. The HOA responded by tightening its grip. Emergency meetings were announced with less than 24 hours. Notice. Attendance was restricted to members in good standing, which conveniently excluded anyone who had ever questioned a fee or fine. Security guards stood inside the clubhouse during meetings. Phones were banned. Notes discouraged. Residents started whispering. And whispering turned into watching. Watching turned into recording. That's when the HOA president made her biggest mistake. She showed up at my attorney's office unannounced. No appointment. No warning. She stormed into the reception area demanding to see me. Clipboard gone. Replaced by a folder stuffed with loose papers. Her confidence was still there, but it was frayed at the edges. This has gone far enough. She snapped when my attorney finally stepped out. You were destroying a community. My attorney didn't invite her in. She spoke calmly, firmly, from the doorway. You destroyed it yourself. She said. We were just uncovering how. The HOA president's face flushed red. You don't understand what you're redoing. She said. These people have mortgages, families, children, and they deserve the truth. My attorney replied. Something you should have provided years ago. That was when the threat stopped being subtle. That night, someone tore the mailbox off the post in front of my shop. Didn't steal anything. Just bent it, twisted it, left it hanging. The next morning, a neighbor told me someone had been taking photos of my garage late at night. Then came the letter taped to my door. No letterhead. No signature. Just 3 words. Drop the case. I took a picture and handed it straight to my attorney. She didn't look surprised. They were panicking. She said. And desperate people make bad decisions. Meanwhile, inside Cedar Crest Heights, the mood had shifted from denial to paranoia. Residents stopped waving at each other. Conversations cut off when HOA board members walked by. Yard work slowed. Lights stayed on later at night. I was invited to a private gathering by a small group of homeowners who wanted answers without the HOA listening. We met in a garage. Doors half closed. Voices low. They told me everything. How HOA dues kept increasing without clear explanations. How special assessments appeared suddenly, labeled as legacy land costs. How anyone who questioned finances was labeled a troublemaker. One man laughed bitterly. They fined me for leaving my trash bin out too long. Meanwhile, they were stealing from all of us. That word stealing changed the tone completely. Within days, more residents demanded financial transparency. The HOA responded by postponing meetings, citing legal advice. Notices went up reminding residents of non-disclosure obligations in their HOA agreements. But the power was slipping. The county made it official when inspectors showed up unannounced. Not 1, 3. They walked the grounds. Clipboards out. Measuring distances. Checking utility access points. The HOA president followed them like a shadow. Smiling too hard. Talking too fast. Residents watched from porches. Phones came out. That afternoon, the clubhouse doors were locked. For maintenance. That night, my attorney got a call from the district attorney's office. They wanted to talk. Because what started as a land dispute had turned into something much bigger. Forgery. Misrepresentation. Potential financial crimes. The HOA tried one last tactic. They filed a countersuit accusing me of unlawful interference and emotional distress. Claimed the land beneath the clubhouse had been gifted in perpetuity to the community. There was no record of such a gift. Not in the county. Not in the state. Not anywhere. My attorney laughed when she read it. They were inventing history now. She said. Inside Cedar Crest Heights, the final cracks were forming. Residents began confronting board members directly, demanding documents, asking questions in public, refusing to pay dues until proof was provided. The HOA responded with fines. That only made it worse. Because now, people weren't just scared. They were angry. And angry homeowners are far more dangerous to corrupt leadership than any outsider with a deed. The clipboard authority that once ruled the neighborhood had turned brittle. The illusion of control was collapsing, and everyone could feel it. The day the ruling came down, it didn't arrive with drama. No gavel slam, no raised voices. Just an email from my attorney with a single line at the top that read, "Quiet title granted." I read it 3 times before it sank in. The land was mine. All of it. Every road. Every driveway. Every manicured lawn and decorative tree. The court had officially recognized what the records had been saying all along. Cedar Crest Heights had been built on land the HOA never owned, never leased, never had the legal right to control. The illusion was over. My attorney called a few minutes later. "You re the sole, undisputed owner of the entire parcel," she said, "including all common areas and infrastructure. The HOA has no standing left." I leaned back in my chair and let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in my chest for weeks. For the first time since this started, I wasn't bracing for the next threat. I wasn't waiting for another letter or another lie. The facts had finally won. The HOA president didn't take the news quietly. Within hours, residents received an emergency notice announcing a mandatory meeting at the clubhouse. The tone was urgent, bordering on frantic. Words like misunderstanding and temporary setback were thrown around. There was talk of appeals, negotiations, and protecting community assets. But the power in that room had shifted. People showed up not as obedient members, but as homeowners who had been lied to. Phones were out. Questions were asked. Demands were made. And for the first time, the HOA president didn't have answers. When someone asked why the HOA never owned the land, she deflected. When someone asked where the money went, she stumbled. When someone asked to see the deed, she snapped. That moment was captured on video. It spread through the neighborhood within hours. The next morning, my attorney and I served formal notices. The clubhouse, the pool, the tennis courts, the maintenance sheds, all of them sat on land that had never been permitted under the fraudulent approvals. The HOA had 30 days to either negotiate legitimate leases or vacate. They responded by filing a lawsuit. It was a mess, poorly written, full of emotional language, heavy on accusations and light on evidence. They claimed the land had been implicitly dedicated to the community through long-term use. The judge dismissed it in under 15 minutes. Without ownership, there was no dedication. Without documentation, there was no claim. That was the moment everything collapsed. The county followed next. An audit of HOA finances revealed irregular transfers. At first, small amounts, then larger ones, payments labeled as maintenance, consulting, or special assessments that led nowhere, accounts that didn't match vendors, checks written to shell entities. Then they found the personal transfers, money moving from HOA accounts into the HOA president's personal account. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. Over years, residents were stunned. Some were angry, some were embarrassed, most were furious. The district attorney stepped in. Charges were filed. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning. She was leaving a fitness studio when officers approached her. No shouting, no spectacle, just handcuffs and a quiet walk to the car. Someone filmed it from across the street. By the afternoon, everyone had seen it. Inside Cedar Crest Heights, the HOA board dissolved overnight. Members resigned. Lawyers stopped returning calls. The clubhouse stayed locked. And then something unexpected happened. Residents started coming to me. Not demanding. Not angry. Asking, "What happens now? Are we going to be evicted? Can we stay?" I told them the truth. "I don't want your houses." I said, "I want fairness." We held an open meeting at a neutral location. No guards. No closed doors. Just chairs, a microphone, and transparency. I explained the options. Lease the land under their homes at fair, reasonable rates, long-term agreements, no surprise increases, no fines for paint colors or mailbox placement. Or, if they wanted, Negotiate buyouts later once everything's settled. No HOA. No secret rules. No clipboard authority. Just neighbors. They voted that night. Overwhelmingly. The HOA was formally dissolved. A new community trust was formed to handle shared maintenance openly. With elected volunteers and public records. Every dollar accounted for. Every decision voted on. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The same community that had once fined people for leaving trash bins out too long now operated on trust. As for me, I kept a portion of the land untouched. 50 acres near the ridge. Quiet. Open. Honest. I built a modest house there. Nothing flashy. A wide porch. A workshop big enough to finally run my business without fear of eviction or rent hikes. The kind of place my uncle would be liked. Business picked up fast. Word travels when people know you stood your ground. One evening, a retired firefighter from the neighborhood stopped by. He handed me a small wooden plaque, hand-carved, from the residents. He said, "Just a thank you. It wasn't too fancy. It didn't need to be." Cedar Crest Heights looks different now. Not physically. The houses are still there. The roads still curve the same way. But the fear is gone. No more threatening letters. No more fines slipped into mailboxes. No more power plays disguised as rules. They built their authority on land they didn't own. Now they live there by permission. Bare permission. And every time I drive past the old gate, still standing but permanently open, I am reminded of one simple truth. Paperwork matters. Truth matters. And no matter how tall the walls or how loud the threats, nothing built on lies lasts forever. If HOA stories like this shock you, hit subscribe.